Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast Network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast.
Ozcast.
Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Ozcast.
All right, so get this. Former President Trump, not exactly, known for being a Bitcoin fan, just announced plans for a strategic Bitcoin reserve and a digital asset stockpile back in 2025, no less. It's kind of like finding out your grandma secretly runs a Twitch channel for speedrunning Mario Kart. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now you might be thinking, what in the Satoshi IS a strategic reserve? Well, think of it like the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve, that massive stash of oil we keep around just in case things get a little dicey. It's there to stabilize prices and keep the country running. Trump's vision, swap the oil for Bitcoin. But here's where it gets really interesting. This is the same guy who once called Bitcoin a very dangerous thing. So what's behind this sudden change of heart? And what could this mean for Bitcoin's value, which, let's be honest, is about as stable as a caffeinated squirrel. Luckily, we've got our expert here to help us unpack all of this.
Well, what's fascinating is this move actually fits into a larger pattern. Trump has been very vocal about wanting the U.S. to become the crypto capital of the planet. And with this executive order, that's him putting his chips, or should I say, Satoshis, where his mouth is.
So not just talk, but action. But how does this whole reserve thing actually work? Are we talking Fort Knox, but for Bitcoin?
So picture this. The reserve isn't funded by taxpayers, but by assets seized in criminal and civil proceedings. So basically, they're taking money from the bad guys and putting it into Bitcoin.
Okay, so less like Robin Hood and more like government-sanctioned asset reallocation.
Okay.
But hold on. Wouldn't buying up all that Bitcoin drive the price through the roof?
That's a really good question. The executive order also mandates a full accounting of the government's existing Bitcoin holdings. Current estimates put that around 200,000 Bitcoin. That's roughly 1% of all Bitcoin in circulation. To put it in perspective, that's a bigger stash than most countries are thought to hold.
Wow, Uncle Sam's been busy. And on top of that, the order instructs the Treasury and Commerce Secretaries to find budget-neutral ways to get even more Bitcoin. But how do you buy Bitcoin on a government scale without, making the market go haywire?
Yeah, budget neutral often translates to, we'll figure out the funding later. And this is where the reactions get really interesting. David Sachs, Trump's crypto czar, called the reserve a digital Fort Knox, arguing that it'll protect Bitcoin's value and save taxpayer money.
Digital Fort Knox.
Yeah.
That's a pretty catchy soundbite. I'm guessing not everyone's buying it, though, right?
Exactly, some. Like tech entrepreneur Shan Salehi are skeptical. He doubts the government can buy that much Bitcoin without significantly impacting the market. And if the price goes up because of their buying, well, suddenly it's not so budget neutral anymore, is it?
So the government could end up being the one driving the roller coaster. That's a little unnerving.
And Spencer Hakimian from Tulu Capital Management called the plan very underwhelming, pointing out that very few government initiatives are truly cost-free. He's got a point there. Things tend to get a little more complicated when Uncle Sam gets involved.
So right off the bat, we have some very strong and conflicting opinions. Some see this as a genius move to make the U.S. a crypto superpower, while others are seeing a potential train wreck in the making. It all really boils down to whether the government can actually pull this off without sending the market into a complete frenzy. But let's go a little deeper here. What are the potential ripple effects of a strategic Bitcoin reserve? We're talking about the U.S. government, with all its economic clout, holding a very significant chunk of Bitcoin. What does that mean for Bitcoin itself?
Well, it raises some crucial questions. Will it stabilize Bitcoin, making it less volatile and more attractive to mainstream investors? Or will it give the U.S. government too much control over this supposedly decentralized system? And what happens if other countries decide to follow suit and start hoarding their own Bitcoin?
That's what I want to know. We're already seeing countries experimenting with their own digital currencies. And if everyone starts scrambling for Bitcoin, it could get pretty chaotic. And then there's this whole Trump meme coin thing, which just adds another layer of weirdness to this whole story.
Yeah. That's a topic for our next segment. But you're right, this move brings up a lot of ethical considerations, the global power dynamics at play, and what this could all mean for everyday investors. It's a lot to unpack, and we're just getting started.
Okay, so we've established that the U.S. government might be sitting on a dragon's hoard of Bitcoin. and now they're looking to add to their collection. But this isn't just some quirky financial experiment, right? There's got to be a bigger game at play here.
Absolutely. You've hit on a crucial point. The U.S. isn't the only player making moves in the crypto arena. China and Russia have been developing their own central bank digital currencies, and others are sure to follow. This strategic Bitcoin reserve could be seen as a power play, a way for the U.S. to kind of assert its dominance in this emerging financial landscape.
So it's like a high-stakes poker game, but with digital assets instead of chips. And everyone's trying to figure out who's bluffing.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Remember, the U.S. holds substantial gold reserves, which gives it leverage in the global financial system. Could Bitcoin become the new gold, a digital asset that nations compete to accumulate?
That's a wild thought. A digital gold rush. What happens if other countries decide to jump on the Bitcoin bandwagon and establish their own reserves? Does it become a zero-sum game, where one country's gain is another's loss?
It's definitely a possibility. Imagine a world where nations are hoarding Bitcoin, driving up its price. It could lead to a new kind of financial instability, with countries scrambling to secure their share of this, digital treasure. But on the other hand, it could also lead to greater cooperation, as nations realize they need to work together to manage this new asset class.
It's like we're at a crossroads, and we don't know which path this whole thing is going to take. It's exciting and terrifying at the same time.
Yeah, it really is uncharted territory, and that's what makes it so fascinating. We're witnessing the birth of a new financial order, and the rules are still being written.
Speaking of rules, let's talk about that Trump meme coin you mentioned. It feels like such a bizarre plot twist in this already strange story. On the one hand, you have Trump creating a strategic Bitcoin reserve, which suggests a level of seriousness about cryptocurrency.
Right.
And on the other, you have him profiting from a meme coin, which, let's be real, is about as far from serious as you can get.
It does raise some questions about his true motivations, right? Is he a genuine believer in the potential of cryptocurrency, or is he simply trying to capitalize on the hype, regardless of the implications? And what about potential conflicts of interest? After all, if the U.S. government starts buying up Bitcoin, wouldn't that benefit someone who, let's say, happens to own a meme coin tied to their name?
Those are some seriously big questions. But let's shift gears for a moment and talk about the average person who maybe has a little Bitcoin. What does all this mean for them?
It's like this. You're on that Bitcoin roller coaster we talked about earlier. Now imagine the government steps in and starts tinkering with the controls.
So buckle up and hold on tight. I can see why some people would be a little nervous.
Right. Increased government involvement could lead to more volatility in the short term, and it raises concerns about potential manipulation. If governments are holding huge amounts of Bitcoin, could they use that to influence the price? Could they even try to control the market?
That's kind of unsettling. Didn't Bitcoin emerge as a way to sort of break free from centralized control?
That was the idea, yes. The decentralized nature of Bitcoin was seen as a way to escape the traditional financial system, a system that many believe is rigged against the average person.
So isn't this move by the U.S. government kind of contradictory? Is it a step towards stability, or is it opening the door to even more control?
It's the million-dollar question, and it has experts debating very fiercely. There are some very valid arguments on both sides. Some argue that government involvement could lend Bitcoin legitimacy and stability, making it more attractive to institutional investors and leading to wider adoption. And if it's done right, a strategic Bitcoin reserve could help protect against price manipulation and market crashes.
But wouldn't that also give governments more power to regulate and control how people use Bitcoin? What about that original vision of a decentralized financial system?
That's the concern of many in the crypto community, definitely. Too much government involvement could stifle innovation and undermine the very principles that made Bitcoin so appealing in the first place. It's a delicate balancing act, and it's too early to say which way the scales will tip.
Okay, so we've talked about international intrigue, potential for market manipulation. This whole Bitcoin reserve thing is a real roller coaster. But let's bring it back down to earth for a minute. What does all of this mean for the average person who's, maybe dabbled in a little crypto, but isn't like a full-on Bitcoin baron?
Well, think of it like this. You got your Bitcoin right. It's already a bit of a wild ride. Now imagine the government steps in and starts, tinkering with the controls. Maybe they smooth out some of the bumps. But then again, maybe they throw in a loop-de-loop just for kicks.
So basically, hold on tight because things could get even more unpredictable.
Exactly. In the short term, more government involvement could mean more volatility. And plus, there's that whole question of, manipulation. If governments are holding these huge amounts of Bitcoin, could they use that to influence the price? Could they even try to, control the market?
Yeah, that's a little unsettling. I mean, wasn't the whole point of Bitcoin to move away from that kind of centralized control?
That was a major part of the appeal, absolutely. Bitcoin was supposed to be this decentralized system free from the meddling of, governments and banks.
So is this strategic reserve, is it a step forward or is it a step backward? Is it making Bitcoin more stable or is it just paving the way for more control?
That's the million-dollar question, and honestly, there's no easy answer. Experts are divided on this. On one side, you have those who say that government involvement brings legitimacy, stability, which could attract more mainstream investors and lead to, wider adoption. A well-managed reserve could even act as a buffer against market crashes, offering some protection for everyday investors.
But couldn't that same logic be used to justify more and more government intervention? Where do you draw the line?
Yeah, that's the crux of the issue. The other side argues that too much government involvement stifles innovation and, undermines the whole point of Bitcoin, that decentralized, independent spirit. It's a tough balancing act, figuring out where the benefits of regulation end and the dangers of control begin.
So what's a regular person supposed to do? Just cross their fingers and hope for the best?
Not exactly. I mean, this is where knowledge becomes power. The more you understand about, cryptocurrency and how these developments could impact the market, the better equipped you'll be to make informed decisions. Don't just follow the hype or, panic sell based on headlines.
So do your research, stay informed, and don't put all your eggs in one basket. Sounds like solid advice, regardless of what happens with this whole strategic reserve situation.
Absolutely. And remember, the crypto world is constantly evolving. What seems like a crazy idea today could be the norm tomorrow. That's part of what makes it so fascinating, but it also underscores the importance of, staying vigilant and adaptable.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. We started with a surprising headline about Trump and Bitcoin, dove into the potential global implications, and explored what it all means for, the average investor. It's clear that this is just the beginning of the story.
Yeah, it's a story that's still being written, and, we're all watching to see how it unfolds. Who knows? Maybe in a few years we'll look back at this moment as, a turning point, the moment when crypto truly entered the mainstream. Or maybe it'll, fizzle out. Only time will tell.
And that's what makes these deep dives so compelling, right? We're not just regurgitating facts. We're exploring possibilities, challenging assumptions, and hopefully getting our listeners to think critically about the forces that are, shaping our world.
Exactly. It's about sparking curiosity and encouraging people to engage with these, complex topics, even if it means wrestling with some uncomfortable questions.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.
Are you a podcaster? Maybe you've got that big idea and you're looking for a network to join. The multi-award-winning Ozcast network can get your content to eyes and ears all over the world. Join now for the first month free, and you could be featuring this sound at the beginning of your podcast. Ozcast. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.